Into the Great Wide Open by Sean Lansendorfer. It was our last training mission before heading to the war. We took off from Fort Lauderdale, 4 bombers in tight formation. TBM Avengers, with 350 caliber machine guns, a 30, and a torpedo big enough to take out a U-boat. Some say our oversized Wildcat was underpowered, but it was easy to feel invincible in the gunner's seat. This turkey was new, and we were the crew testing it out. The boys started calling it that because the damn thing seemed to fall faster than it could fly. Taking off from a carrier felt like a lost cause when you'd come off the catapult at 90 knots. That was barely enough speed to get the wind under you. But we were airborne, and the bird was humming. Everything was going fine. I was in the fishbowl with the 50's breech sitting right by my left ear. My hand was on the pistol grip, just to get a feel for it. The thing was powered, so you could whirl it around easily enough, but there wasn't much to see but clear blue skies. I had a hand crank in case the amplodines failed, but I don't see what good that'll do when a hostile is zipping past you. My knees were jammed up against my chest, and I had my fill of looking around. The gunner's seat was a tight fit, and I wasn't exactly a giant. I climbed down into the radio man's compartment. "Hey, Haro, you still got your wits?" Horowitz didn't like that joke. "Not now, the radio's on the fritz." "What do you mean? They give us bum equipment or what?" I asked. "Everything should be working. It doesn't. So even you should be able to understand why that's distressing. It makes no damn sense," Horowitz complained. "I changed the fuses twice over." The pilot came on over the intercom. "We reached the target location. Call it in, and we can start heading back." "Damn," snapped Horowitz, smacking his radio receiver. "I got nothing." "Well, you know Ensign Parker ain't much for excuses. What do you want to tell him? Maybe I can signal to the other planes. Should I get in my turret and wave my hands around?" I joked. "I could fire in Morse code." "Laugh it up, but it's my ass," said Horowitz. "He's going to give me grief for this crap. Damn officers." I laughed just as he asked. "You're right, it's your ass, but Parker isn't all bad. I'm sure to let me watch you chew you out." The pilot was younger than I was and too serious for his own good. Horowitz was right about one thing. He'd get the brunt for this, regardless of whether it was his fault or not. The plane was rocked. I lost balance and fell back into the Stinger. Horowitz bashed his head into the radio. Before we could get our feet under us, another wave of turbulence sent us reeling. It was hard to know which way to brace when it felt like you were going in every direction at once. "What the hell's going on up there?" I shouted. Horowitz was wiping the blood from his head. The radio may not have worked, but it was sturdy as all hell. The pilot came on over the intercom. "Instruments are going haywire. Hold on to something. I don't know how much longer I can keep us airborne." The power went out. Our single engine sputtered and died. We were going down. Horowitz and I scrambled for our chutes, but we both knew it wasn't happening. The plane went into a nosedive. Everything went black. I regained consciousness in a heap, groaning through the pain. Horowitz was out cold, and his arm looked like a limp noodle. I got to my feet and went for the med kit. We were alive, somehow. It didn't seem like we were sinking, but there were no islands anywhere near our flight path. The sound of nature built up again once a ringing in my ears stopped. "Horowitz, I got the kit. Can you hear me?" I tried to keep my voice down for whatever reason, and gently shook him. He winced, and his face scrunched up as he realized his arm was a ruin, hanging off his shoulder. "Calm down," I said. "I'll patch you up in no time. Just try to hold still and tell me if anything hurts." "It's hard to tell, son of a bitch. Everything hurts," Horowitz said through grit teeth. "What the hell happened?" I handed him something to bite on. "I don't know, but this is gonna hurt." I had to set the bone and get it into a sling, and it wasn't going to go as nice and easy as either of us wanted. He was a tough kid, but you can tell he was fighting back tears. I cut open his jacket sleeve and did my best. I felt sorry for him, but it was for his own good. His pained whines and kicking feet didn't make things any easier, but I managed to do what needed to be done. It's good to know basic training wasn't a waste, but it wasn't a pleasant experience. "You sit tight. I'm going to go check on Parker and see what we're dealing with." I headed on aft to the crew door. I pushed it, but the thing was jammed up against something. I'd have to go through my turret. I crawled up, pulled the red lever to release the glass, and climbed out. The birds were singing, but there were noises out there I never heard before. The place looked like a rainforest, thick jungle and wetter than a frog's ass. It was humid, like breathing in a glass of water. I hopped down and nearly slipped in the mud. Parker took us down in the one spot clear enough from what I could see. We skid down the field into the tree line. One of our wings was sheared off. I made my way over to the cockpit, but the whole thing was smashed up. I pulled up the cover and saw Parker slumped over his controls. He was dead. The kid was an ace. He could have bailed out and saved himself, but tried to land it for our sakes. It was a hell of a thing to do, and hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to get him out, but his legs were jammed in. I got his dog tags and sidearm. I cocked the 1911. A .45 should make anything second guess coming at me. I never did any hunting. In fact, this was probably the closest thing to camping I ever did. I said a prayer for the ensign and hopped down to check on Horowitz. I turned around and stopped in my tracks. There was a big guy with an axe staring right at me, standing 10 yards away. He looked like something out of a comic book, one of them fantasy ones like Tales of the Forbidden Unknown. I put up my gun, but he didn't seem so concerned about that. He was huge, built like a fridge, and decked out in armor. His big blonde beard had all sorts of braids, and he was barking out orders I couldn't begin to guess. "I'm Petty Officer First Class Michael O'Sullivan. Who are you? What do you want?" The big fella grunted and spoke in a deep rasp. "You. English?" "Do I look limey to you?" I countered. He took a step closer. "Your ship is far from water. How many are you?" I took a step back but kept my aim on him. "Listen here, you brick. I don't know what circus you broke out of, but I ain't looking for trouble. I got a bullet with your name on it if you come any closer." He took a step closer, and I shot. My ears were ringing again. It was so damn loud, and we both looked surprised. I never pulled the trigger on anything but paper targets, but I had to do it. The great big bastard wasn't about to call my bluff. He reached to touch the bloody hole in his shoulder. He saw the crimson and grunted, what I assumed was some curses, turned his head and backed off. Ran up a hill to the left. I was shaking. Who the hell was that? I climbed back into the plane and dropped down to see if Horowitz was still conscious. "What's going on out there? You nearly gave me a heart attack. What are you shooting at?" shouted the radio man. "Take it easy. It was a guy twice my size, with an axe out there. He was coming towards me, so I popped him." "Is he dead?" asked Horowitz. "No," I answered. "He took it." "He took it?" said Horowitz. "What is he, Superman?" "Listen, I don't know, but Pocket didn't make it. It's just us." Horowitz stared at the ground and took a deep, shaking breath. It was a lot to take in. We shared a moment of silence. "Shit." "What's it look like out there?" the radio man asked. "Hot, humid, and nothing like Boston," I answered. "You already saw another guy. What if he was friendly and you shot him? What if he could have helped us?" Horowitz complained. "The fellow looked like he came off the cover of Strange Tales and barely spoke right," I argued. "Fair enough. Sounds like we should stay here," said Horowitz. "It isn't safe to go out if there are mooks like that running around. We'll have to keep watch. He knows where we are and might have pals. Have you tried walking yet?" "Yeah, I just got the bum arm. Thanks for patching me up," Horowitz answered. "Tried to get the radio going, but it's all fried." The two of us settled in. We were flying in a formation, so surely help would come sooner rather than later. It took me a minute of sitting before I got antsy, so I looked around to take stock. We had some scant rations. It was better than nothing, but it wouldn't last very long. We had some firepower if there was trouble. It was going to be a tough wait. Alternating watch in the light of day wasn't too bad, but that changed when night came. There were sounds out there that turned your blood cold. Horowitz heard it the same as I did, but hadn't a clue either. One thing we were sure of was that neither of us were going to check it out. There was scratching against the outside, testing the sheet metal. The plane lurched and we heard scraping and a low hum rumbling out like a breath. Something hopped onto the fuselage. The commotion was loud but brief, and then it was all quiet until sunrise. We stayed in the radio compartment for 2 days. "We're out of water," I said. I'm going to go see if I can find some. You're going out there? Asked Horowitz, as if that were a ludicrous notion. Yeah, nothing but piss in here, I snapped. We got no choice. Just stay down and keep quiet. I'll be back. With that, I climbed out. It was a sunny day at least. I inspected the plane and found a long trio of scratches and some marks like something was climbing up. I went to the cockpit and saw they took Parker's body. Whatever was out the first night didn't sound human, but seemed to have a taste for us. I held my canteen tight and headed into the tree line. I figured a water source would be downhill. I found some rough ground that led me into a shallow valley. The brush was thick, and the wildlife was loud, but you'd be hard-pressed to see a thing. You knew you weren't alone, but that wasn't a comfort like it was back home. Having a pal on every street and knowing your way couldn't be compared to hiking in a mess of vines and thinking the next bend will land you face to face with a tiger or something. It was no way to live. I found a trail, and it led me to what looked like cement byways carrying water. There was some stone walls and a statue of a mean mug that was a few feet taller than I was. He had some big lips and a weird helmet, and I couldn't make heads or tails of who it was supposed to be. It looked nothing like the oaf I shot a few days before. I knelt and gathered water from the ancient architecture. It held up better than the roads back home. It was amazing to see, and it gave you goosebumps thinking about how old it had to be. Curiosity got the best of me. The canteens were already full, but this was something you don't see every day. I followed the water down to a great big pond. It was clear blue and looked like a slice of heaven. I hadn't bathed in too long, and my mother was strict about that sort of thing. It made me anxious if I went for more than a day or two. I knelt down to touch the water and swished my hand in the cool blue. I saw whole trees move across the way, and a great big head come out to drink. I barely heard it coming. The thing was as big as a bus, and had a set of jaws that could bite a cow in half. I don't know what kept me from running and hollering, but my hands were shaking something crazy, and I would have pissed myself if the thing gave me another minute. It made a low rumbling that I felt in my bones. I thought for a second, maybe it didn't see me. It gave a sniff at the air and a snort. It could smell me a mile away. It just wasn't hungry. I moved quick and quiet back to the plane. Horowitz had managed to crawl out of the radio compartment and fetch some firewood, but hadn't lit it yet. I got back huffing and puffing, as if I just ran the marathon. Jesus Christ, this couldn't be happening. I couldn't imagine a world where I had to explain what I just saw. "Did you find any water?" he asked. My voice cracked. Yeah, I got it right here. You got a museum back home?" "Ha! I'm from New York. We got the best around," said Horowitz. "Why?" "I saw one of them things, but it wasn't just bones. It was a lizard, as big as a plane. It was drinking out of the pond." Horowitz smirked. His initial reaction was to think I was pulling his leg, but that smile didn't last. "You're serious?" I could only look at him. Horowitz looked stunned, his eyes wide and his mouth hanging open. My heart sank. "Don't tell me it's right behind me." He pointed, and I had enough guts to turn. It was a cockroach the size of a dog. I squished some pretty big bugs back home, but this one put them to shame. I fumbled for my gun. Horowitz had a sharpened stick and scared it into the ground as it came scurrying toward me. I stumbled and fell, never even getting my sidearm up. It was flailing around its legs and making a noise I'd rather not think too much about. The thing wasn't dead, but the rock I bashed its head in took care of that. "Christ," I said. I felt like I was having a heart attack. I tried to act tough so Horowitz didn't think I was chicken. But seeing a bug the size of a Doberman was something you had to get used to. Horowitz's stomach grumbled, and mine did too. "I've had worse," I said under my breath. Horowitz heard. "Yeah, I think that's what they make the dogs on 116th Street out of anyway. If we're going to survive here, may as well get used to it." We weren't sure if cooking it was necessary or what parts had the best meat. It wasn't out of the realm of possibility that we both dropped dead after the first bite. We settled on roasting the thing over the fire, hoping the smoke would drive away anything too curious. I took the first bite. I didn't expect it to be so juicy. The goo inside it plopped out and onto my lap. Horowitz was laughing his ass off. He wasn't exactly shy about getting a mouthful. "It's not too bad," he mumbled. I chuckled. It felt good to lighten the mood. "Thanks for watching my back," I said. "Don't mention it." Horowitz didn't seem like he took positivity well. He looked at the chunk of bug he was eating with what looked like homesickness. "Not too bad." "Huh. I guess not," I answered. We stopped talking when a herd of something started moving down the field. They were eating grass and lumbering over. They were built like tanks, armored up with plates and spikes, long tails swinging about with what looked like a boulder at the end. Horowitz and I were on our asses, scooting back until our backs hit the plain. "They don't look too mean," he said, watching as they chewed on some greenery and wandered around. "You can be as friendly as you like when you're that big. Christ almighty, they came out of nowhere." It was bothering me how quiet these damn things were, or maybe how loud and oblivious we were. Something meaner could have run in and had us for dinner, and we wouldn't have known before it ripped out our necks and was eating our guts. It was awe-inspiring to see the great big things, but it left you feeling fragile in a way that I didn't like. A little one had scampered over and was eating the roach we had cooking. It was almost cute, but it wailed when it got too close to the fire. Its mother came around and stamped it out. Her tail swung around and took off the tail of the Avenger in one go. The metal was shredded like nothing, and the two went on their way, leaving us shell-shocked. Horowitz and I crawled into the open hole that was the tail end, and back into the radio compartment. I cut myself on the jagged metal, but didn't notice until I saw the red stains on my pants. We had a second to breathe, but it was just a lot of gasping and cursing. It was clear survival meant constant vigilance. The mother was a good 30 feet away when the bus with teeth I saw drinking from the pond came out of the woods faster than a thing like that ought to be. It flipped her on her back and bit into her soft underbelly. It took a big enough bite to gut the thing. "Get on the damn gun!" Horowitz shouted. I climbed up and turned the crank until the 50 was lined up with the bastard. With 2 strong legs, a giant tail, tiny arms, and a head full of teeth, I didn't hesitate to pull the trigger. It reared up and moved, but I didn't see where. The gun was loud and I got tunnel vision. The thing was agile and was already gone by the time I got a hold of myself. Everything was shredded downfield of my gun. The corpse, the trees, everything. But the target was circling. I turned the crank, but it had already flanked the plane. It took a big bite out of the sheet metal and shook its head with the instinct of tearing flesh. I was a second away from getting bit in half, but I managed to drop out of the fishbowl before then. It brought up a leg to brace itself on its prey, crushing the cockpit under its weight, and took another bite of steel, but still didn't like the taste. Horowitz looked up to see it out of the new skylight, and I was on the ground when the turret collapsed in on itself. He was yelling, "It's a damn Tyrannosaurus!" There was a lot of swearing after that, but the thing was sure our plane was dead, so lurched off. I wouldn't say it was a fair fight, but if I had kept my head, maybe we would have ended it. But we were alive for now, and that felt like enough of a win. I broadsided it with the 50. It can't have enjoyed that. Was it leaving because it thought we were done, or to nurse its wounds? I felt like an idiot, talking like fighting a dinosaur is going on my boxing record. I was crawling out of the wreckage. "Horowitz, you still alive?" There was more swearing. That was a good sign, unless the giant lizard got into mimicking the distinct sounds of a Bronx Jew screaming his head off. "Eugene, calm down. It's gone. But keep quiet, will you? Something else might eat kosher." I knew I had to get him to stop yelling, and laughing was the only way I could think of doing it. Horowitz, to his credit, caught his breath and kept his mouth shut. I got to my feet and tried to get a look at what was left of the plane, and if anything else was coming. The 50 was out of commission, but the 30 had a clear line of sight now. However, we were equally out in the open. "You all right?" I asked. "Yeah, but we ain't gonna make it. Not with a damn dinosaur roaming around. said Horowitz morosely, nursing his shoulder. I didn't want to believe you, but it was real. We aren't going to make it. There's too much piling on. If my arm heals right, if we can get enough food, if we can get clean water. It's all ifs, and a brutal life any way you slice it. Hey, our ancestors were cavemen or whatever, and they survived fighting those things with spears and rocks. We got a couple 1,000 years on them, so we can handle it, I said. Horowitz chuckled, and I knew I had him. Did you even go to school? Or did they just have you sitting in a room counting beans up in Boston? All right. But you get my point, I said. Let's focus on what we can do. Well, I don't think we'll have to worry about freezing to death. The Avenger will work well enough for a shelter, but we should build a trench or something to hide from the bigger stuff. Sounds like a great suggestion from a guy who won't be doing any digging. I was thinking of sleeping up in a tree or something. Horowitz and I got to thinking, and things spiraled out from there. Were there snakes? How big were they? Spiders? It wasn't a very enjoyable conversation, so I felt like I had to lighten the mood. That's when I remembered. That big guy with the axe can't be alone. And I saw old stonework, Lost City kind of stuff. We might be able to find some structures we could fix up, or a tribe that'll take us in. We might not have to bother. For all we know, they already got a search party coming. Horowitz took a breath. He could whine and complain about every little thing, but it wasn't in him to give up easily. But the day wasn't over. There was a loud bang as something jumped down from a tree onto the plain. It hopped down in front of us and walked toward the corpse. It was an ape, and it wasn't alone. There was a whole band of them. They were baboons, but bigger and meaner by the way they snapped at each other. Covered in gray fur and red in the face, they had fangs the size of knives. They were shrieking and fighting over the animal the tyrannosaur had killed. Others came out of the woodwork and surrounded the bloody, bullet-ridden hunk of meat. We tried to keep quiet and out of sight, but you didn't have to be squeamish to recoil from the sight of them tearing away bits of flesh and killing each other over the good bits. There were too many, and it was only a matter of time. I handed Horowitz the pistol while I manned the 30. We weren't keen on using them. Things were getting messy. They were tearing into the body and ripping out mouthfuls of meat. One of the smaller ones got shoved to the ground. We held our breath as it got onto its feet. It turned and locked eyes with us. Its upper lip slipped up as it bared its teeth in a hideous snarl. It came running at us with a howl. I opened fire, and it went down after a few shots to the chest. I was hoping to scatter the lot of them with the thunder of the 30, but I just alerted the group. They turned and saw the bleeding ape on the ground. Horowitz and I looked right back and locked eyes with the horde of them. For a second, they just stood and stared before they came at us like a charging army. I held down the trigger and swung the gun around in a sweeping pattern to get the ones coming from the flanks. And Horowitz put 3 in the chest of the bastard who was trying to come down onto us. The smoke cleared. The barrel was steaming, but I hadn't warped it. It was a miracle I didn't overheat the gun. Horowitz stepped out first to inspect the carnage. The engagement was over in less than a minute. Jesus, I muttered under my breath. There was so many bodies. I was crawling out when a straggler knocked Horowitz to the ground. The wounded ape was standing over me and shrieking in my face, getting ready to tear me apart. I heard a gunshot and then a few clicks. Horowitz had managed to tag it, but that wasn't enough to take it down. But the axe that split it near in half did the job. It was gruesome, and the warm splatter of blood blinded me. I wiped my face and crawled out in time to see the group of barbarians coming out of the woodwork. You got to be kidding. End of part 1.